Hi there, it's Jennifer Shepard, the Lipstick Mystic, checking in with you today. It's March 26, 2013, and I want to connect with my listeners in a bit of a different way. I've experimented with posting two different audios to my YouTube account over the past months, and I think I kind of sound like a 14-year-old girl, and I sound very stiff and nervous, and I apologize for that. I used to do a lot of radio appearances with national FM radio stations back when I had my full-time psychic counseling practice. And many years before that, I was a professional actress and even did a lot of voiceover work professionally for various companies. To this day, I think you can call into certain businesses that exist in the Princeton area and you'll dial into the menu and hear my voice saying, dial 1 for Mr. Smith, dial 2 for management. So I'm used to projecting my voice and trying to communicate in a very open and relaxed way, but it's been a while because I've sort of hidden behind the computer in recent years, mostly posting on my lipstickmystic.com website, where you'll find my daily blog updates about all manner of strange metaphysical stuff, and many of my misadventures and my occasional menstrual rants when I really need to get some things off my chest. And thank you so much to my male readers and male listeners for bearing with me when I'm in a mood. And I say that in the sense of being a woman who gets into an exaggerated need to vent her spleen at certain times of the month. But I do find that communicating with my audience through YouTube is kind of a fun new way of chatting with people. So I'd like to do more audios up ahead. I'm not quite ready to do my own podcasts, but it is something I'm considering. I also used to do a lot of teaching, and I still do, both one-on-one and with groups, sometimes in person and sometimes over the internet and sometimes one-on-one. And I'm trying to figure out whether I should start a membership site where I could do a combination of written teachings about subjects like psychic development and spiritual street smarts. You know, if you've gotten into dabbling with certain things where there's some negative entities attached to that system or attached to that teacher, and you need to clear out some of the psychic clutter involved with that practice. And then I might have some audios. I don't know. I'm certainly open to suggestions. So if as part of discovering my new book, which is out now, called The Lipstick Mystic's Guide to Time Traveling, Healing the Time Body, and Finding the Best Possible Timeline, while others do the apocalypso dance, or if you stumble upon my articles at my website, lipstickmystic.com, feel free to drop me a line and say, hey, Jennifer, of the material that you present, there are so many different subjects you cover, but I'd really like to know more about X or Y, or, you know, some people are really interested in psychic development. Other people are really trying to clear out negativity, and they're dealing with a lot of psychic attacks and astral presences in the middle of the night that are kind of spooky. These entities are very, very common, so I do want you to know that most people between the hours of about 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. in the morning are being horrifically beamed with a lot of negative energy. And some of it is affecting their dream life when they go to sleep at night, and they're suffering from very clearly manipulated dreams that are not part of their normal subconscious sorting out events and connecting with different higher energies, which is what we normally do when we sleep. These are definitely kind of programmed dreams that are meant to induce fear. They're meant to freak you out. They're meant to knock you out of a place of power. And sometimes in the middle of these dreams, you'll wake up and you'll see strange things in the room, or you'll feel a creepy presence. I'm here to tell you that this is very common. I've been on the front line of talking about these things with people for 27 years, because even when I opened up as a psychic in my teens, I was about 16 years old, I realized that people weren't talking openly about psychic experiences and mystical experiences, and I really just set out to talk with everybody about it, anybody who would listen, basically. And I became kind of a sounding board for people who, you know, when I was younger, it was teens and people in their early 20s. And then as I got older, it was everybody from people my age in my 20s or 30s to people who were 80 or 90, talking to me about puzzling experiences they'd had dealing with esoteric energy. some of it positive and beautiful and wonderful and transcendent, and some of it downright fucking scary. I mean, really, really terrifying. Presences coming in and trying to attack you or kill you in the middle of the night, and you don't know what the fuck's going on, and you try to fight that entity or those groups of entities, and you might actually end up with bruises and marks on your body. This is serious stuff. And I find that most psychics, they go through an awakening process, like I did when I was 16, where they're shown a world of such beauty and such love, and they're able to see how we're all connected. Everybody from the plants to the trees to the animals to the people to the minerals and rocks themselves, and Mother Earth, who is a very sentient and self-aware being. And there is such a thread or a tapestry of love and intelligence and creation and expansion that connects all the good beings of the universe. And our planet is far from the only one with life. There are millions upon millions, maybe even more, planets and stars and moons out there that contain many different forms of life. The suns or the stars themselves have consciousness, and I don't know too much about them yet, but occasionally I am getting messages from the suns, especially our own sun, who is very dynamic, very male, very masculine, and very direct. And our Earth is a female planet, and she's lovely. She's so sweet. And she loves all of us despite our many, 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 many frailties. And when you go through a spiritual awakening process, you briefly glimpse this larger reality. And it's so joyful and so ecstatic. And it's the experience that most mystics seek when they're going away to some sort of spiritual retreat, or they decide to enter the monastery or go into the temple or become a nun. All these pathways that are sort of traditionally laid out, where a spiritual seeker feels like they need to withdraw from the world in order to enter into a more refined and open and loving experience of this reality. Well, what happens today is we don't usually have the luxury of retreating from the world. So the people I've interacted with throughout my 27 years of really being on this path openly and aggressively, my real name has always been out there, I've never hidden anything, is people will turn to me and share experiences with me that they could never tell anybody else about. And I find that beautiful and tragic at the same time. It's beautiful because how wonderful is it that we're finally at a time in our evolution as a species where humans are talking about spiritual experiences, psychic phenomena, and the more puzzling elements of our own nature. Not just our physical nature, but our nature as energy beings. And as energy beings, we connect with the entire universe. And discovering that language and discovering that pathway of communication and intelligence and energy is a wonderful process to be involved with. It's part of the next step for us as an evolving species. But the tragedy is how these people almost always felt like they couldn't talk to anybody else about what they'd experienced. They'd often be immediately policed by their parents, and if it's a young person, they really feel a sense that they don't want to upset their parents, or they might even be disowned by them. And young people need their parents' support. In this economy, more than ever, they often need it both emotionally and financially, so you don't want to piss off your parents. And if those parents are religious, or they're of some kind of tradition where they think that anything spiritual that's not prescribed by a particular religious doctrine is really taboo and really evil, then you're not going to talk about the ghost you saw in your bedroom, or you're not going to talk about the feelings that you had that ended up being a premonition about something going on in your life. So people would turn to me with all their weird experiences. And I'm kind of an archivist. I've kept very carefully as much of this stuff in my short-term memory as I can. And right now I can really feel at this time in my life, I don't have enough memory chips to hold on to it anymore. So I've spent the last 5 or 6 years jotting down so many notes under so many categories, trying to parse out the information that people have shared with me into different categories like death and dying, healing the gay and lesbian and transgender spirit, because there's a lot of issues related to being a gay person or a lesbian person that I have unique knowledge about through all of my counseling that I did as a professional psychic with over 10,000 people, as an artist who worked in the performing arts for years, and just as a friend and an advisor to many, many, many wonderful spiritually brilliant gay people from all over the world. That's one book. I have other books about really understanding processes like psychic development, how to open up spiritually, but also with that, to have psychic street smarts and to really understand that you're going to be tested by a lot of very negative and trickster type entities. And these entities have an agenda. These entities some people call the archons. That's an old name coming from the Gnostic tradition. The Gnostics were the original followers and students of Jesus. And they were the responsible, after he was gone, for originally spreading wisdom about what he taught. But they were very quickly killed off and driven underground by the Romans, who imagined hijacking the popularity of this great man's teaching and making it their own bloody mess. And so they brought in a lot of the Roman faiths, traditions like bloodletting, which got transformed into blood drinking in the ritual of communion, which was something that Jesus never practiced. Drinking blood, or emulating drinking Jesus' blood, is basically a vampire religion. And eating the flesh of Jesus is basically a zombie religion. And people are very into vampires and zombies, so, if that's what floats your boat, I would say okay, except I'm on the path to say, I'm not here to give negative entities a single inch of room. My pathway is to push and to show people how they need to drive this stuff, not just out of their spiritual life, but out of their conditioning, out of their internal programming, where they may have absorbed some traditions over the course of their life, where they're praying to some of these negative entities and they don't realize it. Because the problem is these negative entities are very, very tricky. And as the Gnostics described, if you can actually see one, they take the form of either an embryonic-looking being, these are the gray aliens, or a negative reptilian who has reptilian features. These are the reptilian ETs, or interdimensionals. There's also a very horrible group, much more horrible than the other two, that when I've seen them, they appear as Nordic-looking albino humanoids. And they have the most awful and aggressive energy. And all of these entities seem to be working together, and they have for a long time, to hijack humanity's psychic abilities and spiritual nature and to lead it down a very bad path. Yahweh, or Jehovah, in the Bible, worshipped in Judaism and in also the Islamic traditions and in Christianity, is one of these beings. And if you track all his psychopathic acts as outlined in these ancient books, they're very connected to the entity Marduk, who was an ancient Sumerian god. And these traditions of psychopathology and enslaving humanity and being violent and genocidal and narcissistic and just bizarre to induce fear in the populace and to impress them with pyrotechnics and technology is a very old series of practices by these beings, and we've fallen under their sway. So most people, I advise, don't pray to God, because when you use the word God, or goddess for that matter, you're unconsciously linking into that entity Yahweh or Jehovah, or you're unconsciously, many times when people are linking into the goddess, they're linking into an entity called Ishtar. She was, I think she was Ishtar in the Sumerian texts. She kind of became popular in the Indo-European culture, but Ishtar is also Estra, who was worshipped by the Celtic people, and in fact the Easter holiday is about worshipping Estra. And Ishtar, Ashtar, the Ashtar command, these are all the same entities. And this all traces back to a female ET, or a female negative interdimensional, who is a piece of work. And if you can call a goddess a bitch, she certainly qualifies. This is someone who is incestuous, sleeps with her brothers, likes to psychically enslave people, especially men, is very hostile towards women, and is a real piece of work, as much as Marduk or Yahweh or Jehovah is just as evil. These are beings connected to what I've been shown is an antimatter or inverse kind of energy that doesn't belong in this universe. These entities lust after life in the physical dimension, but they can't be here unless we give them permission to. So they're brilliant. They go into many different worlds and many different emerging planets where the species who are living there are starting to develop a great deal of intelligence as part of their evolution. They usually have opposable thumbs, so they can operate tools and machinery and do more complex things with their hands. And when you find an emerging species like that, these entities often come in to try to seek control over them. And they do all kinds of mind control and psychic conditioning, mostly through religion and through genocides and through violent technologies. So if you were a primitive person living 10,000 years ago, some being flew by in a spaceship and blasted your friend to bits in front of you, so that all you could see was the charred remains, and that God used a microphone to blast in your local language and say, "You shall worship me, you shall have no other gods but me, I am the one God." Well, you're going to be, chances are, pretty receptive to obeying that God's whims. These entities are bullies. They are merciless. They are more psychopathic and evil than Hitler or Stalin or anybody from your worst nightmare in history. And in fact, these entities are implicated in all the crimes that have been committed against humanity and humanity's freedom. Hitler, in World War I, was an officer. He was wounded, and he was temporarily blind. He was sitting in hospital, bemoaning his fate, and he had visions of some of these Nordic aliens. He didn't know what they were. He assumed they were gods or God. And they told him that he would unite Germany and put Germany on the map and become this great leader. Well, guess what? You can track all of his obsession with the occult, the Thule Society, which was a group of women who were channeling these same entities and who were telling a very young and impressionable Hitler that he was destined for greatness. It was all the same entities. These entities are implicated in every crime, every genocide, every cult, and unfortunately, every religion. The Gnostic path that Jesus taught, he was very careful. He didn't say pray to God. He said pray to something bigger, Great Spirit, the kind energy of this universe, the intelligent force that connects us all as intelligent, evolving beings of love in this reality. That's the energy he encouraged people to communicate with. But his message got distorted, it got hijacked, and turned into basically a vampire religion, which quite honestly makes him very, very sad. I've posted about this a little bit at my website, but I've been doing it with some reluctance because I know that the minute you put yourself out there as someone who has had some conversations with the real Jesus, you're setting yourself up for a world of hurt. People always want to say, oh, she's channeling Jesus, oh, she's great, or they want to say, oh, she's channeling Jesus, she's evil. I'm not channeling anything. I'm someone who's worked very hard for 27 years to develop my psychic abilities so I can basically shut my monkey mind up, go sit with a tree, and learn from it. I love trees. I've only developed my ability to communicate with them in the past 10 or 12 years. But the older ones that are 200 years old or more will tell you so much about the history of an area, the evolution of the people who have come there, the ancient history about the ice ages and ancient times, because trees don't just connect to other trees. They connect to the whole shared history of what trees remember, going back thousands upon thousands of years. So to even be in the presence of like an old beech tree that's 200 years old and to just say, show me stuff, teach me, is one of the greatest gifts. And in a similar way, slowly but surely, I'm kind of the Uhura from Star Trek who's like the communicator girl. And my main job is to listen. And I've learned how to sometimes, I can't do this every day. I can't do it on a bad day or when I'm pissed off about something. But when I am able to relax in a certain way and tune in, I can listen to sometimes various animals and the messages they have about things going on around them and around me if they're my cats. Or I'll talk to a wild animal and the wild fox or the wild raccoon will tell me some things. The wild bear that I saw one time briefly appeared to me and communicated just in this brief flash this amazing burst of energy and information that I'm still trying to process years later. And in a similar way, I've learned how to communicate with various angels and I've learned the difference between real angels and the fake ones. The problem is when people first open up to their psychic abilities, they're often tuning in to these entities that are the archons. They lurk in the lower astral plane.